anybody tell me what to think.
You don't strike me as the kind of person who does.
No. And, I mean, you've got to look at issues, and you've got to study them, and you've got to know history and how things were situated in different times. I can see the need for Confederate statues, but that doesn't mean that they need to be in prominent places where they are. They might need to be moved. I also can see the need for civil rights statues, because that is our history. But no one gets to tell me how I think about those things, because I've looked at all sides of all the issues. So I've educated myself, and therein is the pearl of knowledge. If you educate yourself, then you're going to find that you're meeting in the middle with the vast majority of people where common sense reigns. When you get on the fringes, either side, you have some very craftily smart people, and you have some people who didn't pay attention in school. They couldn't even tell you what the Constitution was made up of. The only amendment they know is the Second Amendment, and they don't know it the way it's actually written. It's sad to think that that's exactly what's going on. And it is the fact that groups of people have not paid attention in school and learned anything from the history books or their history teachers or any of their other teachers.
When we look at, let's take what was happening, we'll say at the end of the year. Trump kind of ratcheted things up a few notches, and he pretty much began promising his base that there was going to be a change in the election. Do you think that Trump has been his own worst enemy?
Oh, without a doubt. I have watched and listened and prayed. They're going to change the votes in Georgia. No, they're not. In the first place, changing the vote for him and Georgia would not affect the Electoral College. And wasn't enough votes to make him win. It just would have made Biden win with less electoral votes than Trump won with in 2016.
Right.
So, yes, I think that he had been pounding the Secretary of State of Georgia, the one who's in charge of the elections, and literally being absolutely nasty to the governor. I think they just said, enough, we're not going to be disloyal to our office. We're not going to disrespect the expectations of fair and free elections as far as we can go, because we know Georgia has a bad history of election voter suppression. And even in this past election, thank you, Stacey Abrams, for pointing that one out. But I just think that they went, we're done, we're not going to do this, and so we're going to let the world know what's actually going on. But Trump just kept stepping in it. Every time he opened his mouth, about 33% of the population believes that he is the end-all and be-all, but I think some of them are just finally seeing that he's the emperor with no clothes. Of course, I said that years ago, and I meant it, and I heard it surface the other night. One of the news personalities said that he's the emperor with no clothes, and I'm going, you're stealing my line.
It wouldn't be the first time. You've had some good ones and made some good predictions over time. But a lot of people think that COVID also factored greatly into Trump's loss. So I'm wondering, let's put it this way. Going into 2020, it seemed that Trump had all the momentum in the world. He had, pretty high support and so forth. And then once COVID hit, things started to kind of unravel. Now, naturally, things will unravel with a pandemic of that degree, but at the same time, people thought that Trump didn't really help himself. Do you think COVID was his Achilles heel in a way?
I'm reluctant to say that it was totally his Achilles heel. I think that the house of cards was beginning to fall apart, And COVID didn't help it because his total inaction. He just threw every governor in every state under the bus and said, your problem, figure it out. You know that order you had that was landing? We're taking it. And I think those kinds of things that did not help support his house of cards, because his words came back to haunt him. I don't think it was by accident. The whole intent was to stop the counting of the electoral ballots. But two very bright young ladies managed to grab that box containing all of the electoral college ballots and get it out of the Capitol to a safe place. That box looked to be a very old box, completely wooden. So, and I think the most damning thing was that Mary Trump tweeted out something about, you're finally seeing what we have all known all along. And she's been talking about it since she wrote her book. Her motives for that book were one thing. The information in it, though, is another. And unfortunately, it didn't paint a flattering picture. And what he did in Georgia is exactly what he did with the president of the Ukraine. It was total quid pro quo with a twist. Because in Georgia, he threatened him with criminal action.
Now, what do you have to say to the people out there who might be centrists or those who lean to the right, who enjoy your program, who are afraid that now there won't be anything but radical left legislation that gets through because Democrats hold everything? They're afraid about the packing of the court. They're afraid of D.C. becoming a state, Puerto Rico becoming a state, being outnumbered, never winning an election again. What do you think about all that stuff?
First off, Puerto Rico should be a state because they should be paying taxes. They don't pay taxes. They also don't vote. But they get money from us as a protectorate. So make them a state. D.C. should have been a state a long time ago. But if not a state, then they should have more rights and they should have representation, voting representation, more so than they do. The mayor of D.C. could not call out the National Guard. Only Donald Trump could for D.C. Ralph Northam and the governor of Maryland didn't have to go through Donald Trump to call out the National Guard. Governors can do it. There's nothing in the legislation that allows D.C. to do it. Will there never be another Republican president? I don't think that's true. Even if we did take in Puerto Rico and D.C. as states. As to the far left agenda, I don't think you're going to see the Green New Deal, but I do think you'll see movement towards a greener economy. Ford Motor Company is already doing that. There's a hybrid Mustang now. There's a hybrid pickup truck. Companies are already moving in that direction. I think the far radical left stuff, that will never make it in there because your centrist Democrats aren't going to let it happen. And your centrist Republicans and Democrats make a pretty good block of Congress right now. I do think you'll see more on civil rights. Mm-hmm. I do think you will see more on infrastructure because our infrastructure has just gone to the dogs.
Yeah.
I guess that's the nicest thing I can say.
It's the nicest way to put it.
We know my mouth can get me in trouble. I have trouble staying in my lane. I do think you're going to see Biden working with both sides of the aisle and Harris working with both sides of the aisle, trying to keep them moving in a generally better direction that is better for this country.